different cultures surrounding the pieces. To give you a more specific idea of the object, it's a sword. It's a white sword. It was after the most recent transmission of 2019 crossing the event horizon.
Yes. It represents a vibrational idea of extracting power and information from within an area that it was formerly restricted to. Do you understand this analogy?
I do. And do these pieces, because there are thousands of them, do they tie into the concept of the 5 hybrid races and what you have expressed as Aztlan?
Some of them do, not all of them do.
I understand. Thank you.
Yes.
To continue, another idea or concept that some people within our community play with is the idea of chemtrails.
Yes.
Or geoengineering.
Yes.
And within that idea, there's a spectrum of a more benevolent perspective on the operation as opposed to a more malevolent.
Well, it's not really the idea of malevolence as much as it is ignorance.
That.
Because the idea is the attempt at that type of weather engineering actually needs to be done using gold. But since gold is seemingly so valuable to you, people opted to use other kinds of elements that are not necessarily healthy for you to be injecting into your atmosphere.
Thank you.
So they can have a similar effect of engineering the weather, but they will also be carrying a detrimental effect because they are not necessarily inert elements.
It's genuinely irresponsible in your...
It is a lack of understanding.
Right. And lastly, in the beach community of San Clemente,
yes,
there's a nuclear power plant.
Yes, there is.
That power plant had a leak in 2012 and has been out of service and has spent fuel located at the shoreline on a fault line in one of the most highest populated...
How exciting is that?
Absolutely. And
I bet you're all just chomping with anticipation about what might happen.
I'm in a unique situation. I have a responsibility because I work in a science and technologies laboratory in the city of San Clemente, working on advanced physics.
Yes.
And we are considering the idea of how to structure the existence of all that is to make the spent radioactive fuel not as harmful, because so far that's not a solution available or on the table.
The answer you seek is to be found in different ways if you explore the sunflower.
Wow.
Look at the patterns, look at the elements, and understand why they have the capability of absorbing radioactivity in a safe way.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Aveo.
Hello, Bashar.
And you, good day.
My name is John. I've been contemplating this grand experiment of free will that this planet seems to be, and that the difference between like good and evil.
The difference between
good and evil,
which are subjective,
selfless versus
subjective understandings. This is why we say positive and negative energy, because we're making a mechanical description rather than a subjective one. Do you understand?
Could you expand?
Positive energy is that which mechanically integrates, connects, expands. Negative energy is that which mechanically segregates, condenses, disconnects. So the idea of what you typically refer to as good and evil is simply the expression of whether you are in alignment with positive energy or negative energy. Because negative energy will create consciousness to experience itself as disconnected, dissociated, segregated, compartmentalized, and thus allow it to perceive itself in a way that makes it seem logical to attempt to dominate and control the reality around it because it doesn't feel connected to the reality within. So the idea of good and evil are subjective behaviors that are the result of the kind of mechanical positive or negative energy that a consciousness is utilizing as a tool. Yes? Make sense?
Yes. And following that train of thought, I'm trying to understand. I'd like to see this world go in the hands of the workers of light rather than darkness.
But you will never change the world you're on. You never do. You change yourself, act as an example of the change, and you shift yourself to another version of Earth that is already more reflective of the change you made within yourself. The world you were on is still there and populated by people that decided they didn't wish to change in that direction. So you will never change the ones that choose to never change. But by being an example of the kind of reality that you prefer in your actions and your behaviors, then you give others an opportunity to see by example in you that they can also align their energy to that version of the Earth and shift themselves to that version of the Earth along with you. That's how it actually mechanically works. You never change the planet you're on.
Thank you. That kind of goes along with this whole idea of Luciferianism being selfish and deceitful and coercion and blackmail and murder versus a Christ-like approach where you esteem the needs of others.
Yes, well, everything has the ability to express its polarity, but again, please remember that creation is not a duality, it's a trinity. There is always a balance point in the center. Yes?
Yes.
Does this help?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome.
Hello, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
How's it going?
Perfect, and you?
I had a question about the simulation theory.
Simulation theory.
Yeah, scientists are starting to believe...
that you are a holographic structure?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, in a sense, that's true, because physical reality isn't really real. It's a projection of consciousness, and therefore holographically structured, yes.
Interesting.
But it's coming from your consciousness. You are all co-creating it by agreement.
Interesting. Would it be considered like a computer game kind of
You
idea,
can look at it that way if you wish, because it provides you an environment, a constructed artificial environment that allows you to focus your consciousness in a certain way to have a certain experience that you otherwise couldn't have, and therefore you are playing by the rules of a particular game so that you can discover yourself from a new point of view. You forget who you are so you can remember who you are from a different angle, a different perspective. That's, in a sense, the rule of the game, transformation. Yes?
Yeah, it makes it more fun, you know, to think.
Well, yes.
Yeah. But,
absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that idea.
Does that help?
Very much so. Yeah, because, you know, life gets so stressful sometimes. The idea
but it doesn't
of a
have
game,
to be.
You know.
It doesn't have to be. Remember, there is no such thing as an inherently difficult or problematic or stressful situation. No such thing. It's your definitions that allow you to experience it that way, because the situation itself is fundamentally neutral. Even though someone may have created a situation from a negative energy perspective, that doesn't mean you have to experience it that way if you don't match the vibration that they created it with. You can neutralize it by coming at it with a different reason and different definition for why the situation exists. You can recognize it might have been created out of negativity, but that doesn't mean that you have to continue to accept that it's going to be negative for you. So anytime you feel the idea of the stress, that's usually a sign in your first clue that it's important to take a moment to stop and ask the important question. What would I have to believe is true about myself in order to be experiencing this feeling? Because if you understand how things work in physical reality, you understand that there's no such thing as an emotion that exists in a vacuum. Emotions cannot exist, cannot be experienced until you have a definition that you believe is true. That's the blueprint. And that gives rise to everything else. So you can always trace back your behaviors, your thoughts, and your feelings to what the definition is you're buying into that is generating those feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. And when you change the definition, the feelings, thoughts, and behaviors also have to change because they all only take their cue from the definition you believe to be true. And you can prove this easily because if I gave you a word that you had no definition for and asked you how you felt about it, you would shrug your shoulders and say, I don't know, because I don't know what it means. There's no definition. But when I give you the definition and you understand the definition, then the emotions and the thoughts and the behaviors in relation to that word start to come up, start to change. Yes?
Got you. So you define the definitions for yourself.
You always create your own definitional relationships to every situation and circumstance. Some of them may seem to be automatically containing those things, but none of them do. They are empty of any built-in meaning. You are taught to give them meaning, and sometimes so automatically that it makes the situation seem like it has built-in meaning. Oh yes, everyone knows that's a bad thing. Do they? Do they really? Not really, not necessarily. Again, you can objectively and neutrally recognize that somebody may be creating something from a negative space. But to you, you can assume that the only reason you may be perceiving that or experiencing any part of it is because there must be a positive reason why you're doing so, why you're there at all. Because there are no accidents, everything is synchronicity, everything is an orchestration, and if you're experiencing or even observing anything, there must be some positive reason why you're doing so, or it wouldn't be happening, or you wouldn't be aware of it at all. So you can always decide, all right, well, maybe I'm experiencing this and observing that someone created this from a negative perspective because maybe I need to help them understand how to change their perspective and turn this around into something positive for them. And maybe that's my positive participation in why I'm even here observing this thing happening. You have to examine these things and decide what part you play and what part someone else plays in what it is that's going on. But you can always know that you will get a positive effect from it if you remain in a positive state and don't decide what your state is just based on how something looks because of the way you've been taught to think what it means because of how it looks. That's not the way it works. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Is this helping?
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you. I have one more question.
Yes.
Recently, I've taken a plant shamanic journey.
Oh, all right. How exciting.
An ayahuasca. And
yes?
I'm wondering, is that reality a parallel reality, or is that more the underpinnings of reality? Because it's almost
What's
like
the difference between those two statements?
Well, to me, it seems like the grid work of reality.
It can expose the
more of
underlying
the
template.
Yeah.
Yes, it can expose the underlying template, but that doesn't mean it's not a parallel reality, too.
Okay. Cool.
Yes?
Perfect.
Does that help?
Absolutely.
All right, well, enjoy the journey with that particular teacher, and remember, one of the most important things to get out of it is familiarity with the state itself that experience conjures up within you, so that in the future, you can recreate the state on your own without the teacher.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Greetings, Bashar.
And a you good day.
Thank you very much for that explanation of the portals, because I love the idea of the arc.
All right.
I'm part of another channeling class, and we talk a lot about the arc of the now,
Yes.
the present moment, and that reminded me of that. So that was great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your synchronicity.
I actually wanted to ask you about the idea of choice.
Yes.
So my understanding is that we as humans don't really realize we have choice. We just assume that whatever situation we're in has been chosen for us, or we can't get out of it, or we sort of have a negative way of looking at it.
And now you understand that that's nonsense, yes?
Right, it is nonsense.
Because the idea is there is an aspect of the idea of why it's there that might be called destiny, but within the idea that you're experiencing that, you have all sorts of choices as to how to experience it. Yes?
Right. So my question is, what's beyond the choice? When do you become choice rather than choosing? Do you see what I mean?
When do you become choice?
Right. You're not noticing that you're actually choosing. You are the choice naturally in the moment.
Well, that just takes conscious self-awareness of the fact that you're creating your reality every moment too. So that you understand that everything you experience on some level, whether consciously or unconsciously, is by your choice. That doesn't mean it's always specifically intentional, but your choice is that you will experience something that aids and assists you in the theme that you chose to explore.
So that's really when choice becomes almost unapparent. You're just choosing without knowing that you're choosing. You
are allowing yourself to attract and choose whatever works best for you at that particular moment, and sometimes you don't necessarily have to know what that specific thing will be until it shows up, or sometimes you may make a specific choice. Both can work, but it just depends on how you would like to experience that.
I guess it's the idea of, instead of looking, what we learn in all of this is pretty much how to observe ourselves and see what we're doing. And I'm at the place now where I'm enjoying that,
yes.
But I would rather be in the moment and not have to notice that, because I feel like it interrupts my passion. When I'm in the passion, I don't even notice it.
All right, well, then just live your passion.
Right.
And act according to whatever it is that shows up from that state of being, and you will be in the moment.
Right. Well, that's been happening more and more.
Yes. Well, that's one of the natural symptoms of the expansion of consciousness.
My dreams now, I know, are not dreams, they're parallel realities, and I get it.
Yes.
For example, recently I've been in touch with the Venusians and a being called Oscar, and talking to him, and also the Gaians, the species that was birthed from Gaia. And without having any fear, or especially not labeling anything, I find that it comes in much more easily. But that's a tapping into the imagination that I've never done before, but it feels really good.
All right, yes. All right, well, continue to have fun.
I will.
It's your process at this particular moment, and that's fine.
My last question is, have you heard of the term Homo divinicus?
One more time.
Homo divinicus.
Yes, we understand the terminology. It's similar to what we call Homo galacticus, but from a higher dimensional level.
So the Homo divinicus it's difference. There's a difference in experience, correct? It's an experiential difference.
Well, all things are.
Right.
But it represents the concept of a very high frequency experience. Right. The recognition, the full recognition and expression of yourself as an aspect of the divine, of source, of all that is.
Right.
Yes?
Yeah, that's it. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
Good day to you. Let's see. First, I'd like to talk about Sedona.
All right. Speak up.
The most recent time I was there, we took a circuitous route to get there. I hadn't been there in a long time. We went through Green Valley and then towards Sedona. And we didn't know how much further Sedona was, but then all of a sudden, I saw this beautiful rock. And I'm like, well, there's Sedona.
You're talking about the general surrounding rocks?
The very first large rock that we saw where we could tell we were going into Sedona.
All right. You are referring to Red Rock.
Actually, as we got closer, well, I said to my husband, I think that's Bell Mountain. And he's like, how would you know that? And I'm like, I don't know. And then we pulled into town, went right past there, and it was Bell Mountain. And
yes.
So we stopped, and I looked at it, and you mentioned your ship is above there. So
yes.
Could you see me while I was there?
Not specifically.
Okay. So I just thought that was really fun. And I love what you were talking about. And could you expand a little more about the way that we can all use the portal in Sedona to make shifts?
Well, as we said, Sedona is a mirroring magnifier. What you bring into Sedona is usually what gets amplified. It may take some time to adjust to that energy, or sometimes people need to dip in and out of it by going into Sedona and leaving Sedona, processing what they got, going back to Sedona, leaving Sedona, processing what they got, or maybe they can handle it by staying there. But generally speaking, it will put you in touch with whatever energies are within you in a much more magnified way to make you more aware of what it is you may need to work with. Yes?
Yes. And now I want to talk a little bit about habits and the kit.
Habits.
Habits, yes.
Yes, well, habits are not habits when you know they're habits. Then they become choices.
Yes. And so if I realize that I have some habitual behavior that, whether it's getting to me to where I want to go or don't want to go,
Yes.
I either want to amplify it or not amplify it. Well, if it's a habit that is not serving me, sometimes as I move forward, I'll forget to pay attention to the habit, and then I'll slip back into the habit. Are there any tools and techniques for us to...
Of course there are.
Okay.
Again, this goes back to the one main technique and understanding that we have talked about many times, and that is understanding the motivational mechanism within you. You have to understand. It's important to understand how the motivational mechanism works. This is how it works. There are no exceptions to this. Not any of you are an exception to this. This is just built into you. It's part of your being as a physical mind. You always, instantly, immediately, without fail, always choose in the direction of what you believe benefits you. Always. There is no exception to this. You will always choose what you believe benefits you. You will always move away from what you believe does not benefit you. Notice the operative word is what you believe. Because you may be able to choose what doesn't benefit you, but the only reason you would realize you're doing that is because you have a belief that makes it look like it benefits you more than the alternative. Once you understand that, then you can realize that any so-called habit, any so-called pattern is nothing more than the recognition that you have a particular definitional belief attached to your motivational mechanism with respect to who it is you truly are that is somehow diminishing your perception of who you truly are and making it seem as if moving in the direction of your truth would actually be the least beneficial thing. So when you figure out what the definition would have to be to make your excitement seem less than exciting, to make what doesn't excite you seem more exciting than your excitement, then you will have the key that allows you to then switch those things on the motivational mechanism. Because once you realize, once you identify what the negative belief is that is dampening your excitement, you will see that it makes no sense. It's illogical. You will break the link that that belief has to your truth, to your excitement, to your passion, because it will no longer make sense to connect that belief to the idea of your passion. You will realize that it's probably just a fear-based belief that you bought into, saying, well, if I did in fact move forward in my best way, my passion, to the best I can, I'm afraid something bad will happen. Therefore, I'm going to stay exactly where I am, because even though I might desire to go in the direction of my excitement, my motivational mechanism says that if I do, something worse than what's going on now will happen. So I'll stay where I am as much as I don't necessarily find it exciting, because I've defined where I am as safer. See what I'm saying? So when you get a handle on understanding that that's all you need to do is find that definition that makes your excitement seem less safe than where you are staying, and see that it makes no sense by identifying that belief consciously, then it will flip. Your motivational mechanism will flip. Because as soon as a belief makes no sense, it's gone. That's the end of the process of letting it go, not the beginning, because you don't hold on to things that don't make sense. If you keep doing the same thing, if you keep having the same behavior, if you understand how the motivational mechanism works, then doing the same thing, what you call the pattern and the habit, can only mean one thing. You haven't found the fundamental belief yet. Keep digging. Because as soon as you find the fundamental belief and let that go, all the secondary beliefs that may be connected to it will also collapse. But sometimes, because of the nature of negative beliefs, Because they need to perpetuate themselves, because that's what they're designed to do, they may use a little bit of a trick in perpetuating themselves, which means they may surround themselves with other negative beliefs that are secondary negative belief, offshoot negative beliefs, so that when you find one of those and let it go, you may think, I have let go of the fundamental belief and now everything is hunky-dory. But in fact, they're still hiding down there because they're going, she fell for it. You have to keep digging. The clue is always in your behavior, in your thoughts, and in your emotions as to whether you have truly let go of the fundamental belief or not. So the habit, the pattern, is nothing more than saying, keep digging and find the fundamental belief that allows you to keep choosing this because you believe it's in your best interest to do so. And when you reveal to yourself the nonsensical nature of that belief and break that link, your motivational mechanism will flip and you will start choosing in the direction of what actually serves you and not in the other direction. That's how it works. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I want to ask about a specific, fun, silly example. Like, say you sit down to a great movie and you open up your favorite bag of cookies, and all of a sudden you're eating the whole bag of cookies. And so it's about going, what am I doing? And like stopping yourself so you
ask
don't
yourself,
make yourself
yes,
sick on
what
the
am I
cookies.
doing? If you believe that what you are doing is not necessarily beneficial to you, but you find yourself doing it, that's the moment to stop and ask the question. Why am I doing this? What's the reason I'm choosing to do something that I know may not be too beneficial for me? Now, again, understand that sometimes it might be beneficial. You have to be able to discern the difference of the reason that you're creating, because you'll be able to tell the difference if you're honest with yourself between excitement and anxiety. And so when you take that moment and realize what it is you're doing in your behavior, that's the whole point of that moment, is to take that moment, stop in that moment, examine that moment, explore that moment, and find out what the reason is why you're choosing to do what you're doing. That will usually reveal the belief that you're working with, and then at that moment you can decide whether or not that belief is in alignment with your truth or the antithesis of your truth. And then from that point forward, if you let it go, your behavior will change. The urges will stop, because you will no longer be living in that state of being if you use that moment for that reason to explore, examine, and discover what the reason is that you're doing what you're doing. It's called know thyself.
Yes, I love that. And I love the way you phrased it. And I know people that...
Does that help?
Yeah, that helps a lot.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.